Hi CNM students, my name is Jennifer Schaller and I am a teacher at CNM's English department. I teach creative writing and composition and every once in a while tech writing as well. So what I wanted to share with you today is some information on how to write a memoir essay. In my creative writing class, usually we'll have a unit on poetry, fiction, and then creative nonfiction, and we go over the different types of some genres of creative nonfiction essay. So memoir essay is one kind, but there are others as well. So we might spend a week on memoir essays, and this is material that I would show my students as they are learning to write creative nonfiction. So, let me see. Okay, here's a quote. Art is a lie that makes us realize truth, at least the truth that is given us to understand. And so I bring up this quote because when you're writing creative nonfiction, you're writing about your true experiences, but you're using artistic elements to convey the story. And so some details you go into with a bit more depth, and it's not necessarily the past as it occurred, right? It's a story that you're writing down on paper, so it gets a little bit tricky when you start thinking about, I'm writing this thing creatively, I'm calling it true, but I'm using details, and what if you can't remember everything? And so in creative nonfiction, you can write about things that you maybe wish you would have experienced, or would have liked to experience differently, or you can conjecture about different events in your life, even if you can't totally remember them. You just want to remain true to what you remember. You can also fact check with another person who's maybe had that experience with you. But so whenever you're writing memoir, you have different creative craft features. So craft features are like your writer's toolbox, and they help you to paint the story for the reader on the page. So some sample craft features that you can make use of in a memoir essay would be plot. You want to include basic orienting facts, organization structure. Basic orienting facts is that you make sure that the reader knows when something happened, where, and give us a little bit of the context. We have all these other features that I can't go into because I don't have enough time, but if you were to take a creative writing class, you could learn more about imagery, and we would talk about images in poems and in creative nonfiction. Some of these craft features stretch along all of the genres. So reflection is really important in memoir because it's the reason why you're telling the story. When you're reflecting in a story, you are making sense of it for the reader. So it's like your interpretation. If you were to write a thesis-driven essay and you were looking at quotes and interpreting them and telling the reader how they proved your thesis, like that's a type of interpretation. It's more academic interpretation. Well, in creative nonfiction, you also want to interpret and reflect on your experience, and that takes time and also critical thinking. So for that reason, I think that writing memoir is a useful exercise for anybody. So in order to pick a story, it's hard because you probably have lots of stories that you'd want to tell. You want to start off brainstorming. Ask yourself, what's the story that you want to tell? Why do you want to tell it? And then how could an outside reader relate to what you have written? So you don't want to just write about your experience as it happened to you without maybe thinking about how an outside reader could relate to it. Your characters can be vivid. You can include dialogue. You can include events that create some suspense to draw the reader into the story. But you always want to be thinking about how, like, think about your reader, who you're writing for. And another craft feature that this is pretty tricky in creative nonfiction because it's essentially the author. If you're writing creative nonfiction and you're using first person point of view, writing a memoir, your persona is you describing yourself on the page. So if you paint yourself as a perfect person without any flaws, you could potentially be an unbelievable character because nobody's perfect, right? So you have to sort of humble yourself when you're writing creative nonfiction, memoirs specifically, and think about how can you humanize yourself and how can you get the reader to believe what you're saying. Because if you're the only person in your story who does not make mistakes, then it makes it harder for us to believe. And also, good characters are fallible and they're flawed, and that includes ourselves. So this is some of the stuff that I would go over in a creative writing class, and we would definitely go over more. We would probably plot out a story, think about how do you want to structure and organize your story. So those elements of writing and composition and tech writing, like transitioning and thinking about structure, those also relate to creative writing as well. Like even, I mean, poems are fun when they're tangential, but you can't, if you can't understand what's going on at all, right, it's hard to get into the poem. Like, you need something to ground the reader, a story, an image. And then lastly, I'm going to end on reflecting in memoir because that's an important craft feature. So if you're reading through a memoir and then an author starts reflecting on what they think about what they've learned from the experience over time, that is the reflection. And so you don't have to like wrap up everything nice and neat in a little pretty bow. Like, reality is not pretty. There's not lots of happy endings. So I mean, it's okay to reflect and to admit that you don't know it all, and that you know, you hope to someday learn more or grow more, or like, you don't have to know everything to write a memoir. You can write about your experience and reflect on it, and if an outside reader can relate to it and learn something from it, then it's valuable reflection. So you have to like risk, and my dissertation director used to always say that you had to say the hardest thing. So that thing that, you know, you hate to admit about yourself or that you worry will make people not like you, that is perfect for a memoir, because you know what, everybody has things about themselves that I'm assuming they don't like. So we want to hear like the good and the bad and just, you know, whatever, the nasty. It's just fun. It's just fun in memoir. So with that, I will leave you and consider taking a creative writing class at CNM. And thanks for watching.